Now, the Irish Farmers Journal caused a massive stir when they published an article recently questioning whether some of the science behind climate change is sound. Matt Dempsey queried whether the accepted wisdom can justify Ireland putting the brakes on our agriculture industry. It was immediately branded as fake news.
It's supposed to be 70 degrees today. It's freezing here. Speaking of global warming, we need some global warming. It's freezing.
The most criticized scene in the movie An Inconvenient Truth was showing that the combination of sea level rise and storm surge would flood the 9/11 memorial site. And people said, what a terrible exaggeration.
Hurricane Sandy slammed into New York City last night, flooding the World Trade Center site.
Storms get stronger and more destructive. Watch the water splash off the city. This is global warming.
I feel so scared, sorry.
Despair can be paralyzing, but this to me is the most exciting new development. We're seeing a tremendous amount of positive change. The basis is there, but it's still not enough.
It's crunch time at the climate change conference in Paris.
Still some really tough negotiations going on.
What would it take to shift to renewables? I'm talking about breaking the impasse. Virtually every nation in the entire world agreed to get to zero greenhouse emissions. It is unprecedented.
It's time to put America first. That includes a promise to cancel billions in climate change spending. Our plan will end the EPA.
The next generation would be justified in looking back at us and asking, what were you thinking? Couldn't you hear what the scientists were saying? Couldn't you hear what Mother Nature was screaming at you?
That's the trailer from Al Gore's new documentary, An Inconvenient Sequel, to be released in July. Matt Dempsey, former editor of the Irish Farmers Journal, is here. It was your article that kicked all of this off. As Al Gore says, can't you hear what the scientists are saying? Perhaps maybe tell us what you're saying.
No, because I was only reporting on a scientific lecture that I was invited to. And I reported it, and I said, if what we were told was true, then it has some very basic consequences compared to the conventional wisdom.
Okay, so tell me.
I was simply raising the question that had been posed in the lecture.
Tell us what the question is.
The question was twofold. One, the carbon dioxide. I think the cement roadstones and Ryanairs can fight their own fight. But I was most intrigued from an agricultural point of view, and I have been editor of the Farmers Journal. Methane is the main greenhouse gas emitted by livestock, and the lecturer said that in the greater scheme of things as regards greenhouse gas emission, methane was not particularly important. Now, this was really very significant, and if true, and I simply said, if this is true, then it has consequences for the Irish livestock industry.
Okay.
So out of the blue then, I wrote the piece and some people supported it and some people didn't. But then I had an interesting note from Professor Jerry Boyle, the director of TAGASC. Now he's about 1,000 scientific personnel, and his job is to screen the results that come up to him and to take a balanced view. And he said methane has only a relatively short impact on the environment, about 12 years compared with the infinite impact of pure carbon dioxide.
Okay, but
so the translation of methane to carbon dioxide equivalent units is highly misleading.
Okay.
So that was the view from somebody with integrity and capacity.
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide are extremely likely to have been the dominant cause of global warming since the mid-20th century. Now, that, we're told by 97% of scientists, is established fact.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm not querying
so
that.
So let's just get down to brass tacks here.
Yeah.
Do you accept that climate change is man-made?
There's certainly some of the global warming effects that we see is, I think, man-made, yes. There's two consequences, though. I mean, it's clearly most serious in the Arctic. On the other hand, we also have had 6 or 7 years of extremely high grain yields in the world. Carbon dioxide is essential for plant growth. An increase in the concentration certainly enhances plant growth. And all I'm doing is asking the question, is there a correlation between the extremely low price of grain because of abundant supplies and extra carbon dioxide.
Right. Victoria, is he allowed to ask the question?
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with Matt Dempsey writing an opinion article, which was marked as an opinion article in the Farmers' Journal, because it is, at the end of the day, a private newspaper. He didn't follow journalistic procedures in that he should have made it plain that this was a very minority view, 3% view, that Richard Linson, who was the lecturer, was a climate contrarian, and that in fact Richard Linson has strong contacts with the coal industry and with the petrochemicals industry. However, my problem is really with the public service broadcaster. That's a very different situation, because we're here yet again, you giving a platform to the idea that there's a big argument and a big controversy
you're here
about
to give
climate
us the
change.
other side.
No, I don't want to give the other side, because the point is we should be beyond this. What we should be doing is discussing the challenge we face, the drama of our appalling lack of effort to cope with our curb our emissions. We're meant to have 20% reduction
so Victoria, if
by
the battle
2020.
if the battle has been fought and
have.
won, why was Donald Trump elected on the platform? And we saw some of his views there.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't be giving a platform to Donald Trump's views either.
Okay, he was democratically elected.
Given that this is a public health hazard, this is actually, as we can see every year from the impacts on our climate. I think that the public sector, the public service broadcaster, who we all pay, should start from a different level. And we should be discussing...
OK, well, our job and my job is to facilitate discussion. And as part of that, we asked our Claire Byrne Live and Morg smartphone panel, do you believe that climate change will pose a serious threat to the world in your lifetime? Now, 34% said no and 57% said yes. 9% don't know. Now, I know that the yeses have it, but there's a big section of those people, of 1,000 people, who question whether this will have an impact in their lifetime.
There's a great gap, a great communications gap, but I don't think that so far this
so
programme has been helping.
So does that not give us licence to discuss it?
I've never said that you can't discuss it. What I'm saying is that you should... No.
I think you did.
I think you do not start from the position of, is climate change real? Not again. Because
we didn't.
In fact,
absolutely. Now, I will not have that. We did not start with that position, and I will not have you say that. He said, are the methane emissions what we have been told they are? We are not denying that climate change is man-made, and I will not allow you to say that.
According to IPCC scientists are over 30% more, 30 times more damaging than those of the other greenhouse gases.
Michael Fitzmaurice, you want to
first
come
of
in
all,
here?
I think, Claire, that the 34% has probably gone up to 48%, because once again, when you question anything in this country with some fundamental people on the other side of this argument, they basically try and degrade anybody that has any other opinion, which is intolerable. We've listened to 3 or 4 minutes of basically that the national broadcaster shouldn't have an open debate. We are entitled to have open debate. Every person in the country is entitled to have an open debate. The reality of the industry in this country is that 12% of everybody, every man, woman, every person that's working out of the 2 million people are involved in the agricultural sector, as again England, where 1.5% is, as again Germany, where 2.4% is. So 1 in 8 people is involved in the agricultural sector in this country.
OK, but there's no denying, Michael, that in Ireland our agriculture emissions are very high in comparison to other countries.
They are actually no higher than they were in 1990, because you can go through the statistics. We have 6.45 million cattle.
But we committed that they wouldn't be as high as they were in 1990.
In 1990, what we had in 1990, we said we'd go back to that. You look at what we had in 1990. We had 6 million sheep and we had 6.1 million cattle. Now we have 6.5 million cattle and we have 3.4 million sheep. So in actual fact, we are actually no higher in the numbers of stock numbers in the country. And the one thing we have a lot more forestry that, unfortunately, when the government pays a grant to a farmer, is taking the carbon credits out of it, when it should be the agricultural sector that's looked after.
So it's the trees' fault?
No, it's not. I'm not saying it's anything to do with the trees' fault. I never said that. What I am saying is we have more trees growing in the country.
Let me ask you. Do you accept that climate change is man-made?
I question an awful lot of climate change. I think man has a certain amount to do with it. There are other things that has a lot to do with it. And it's up for debate. I've seen science used in bogs, which is now admitted that it was up to 30 to 40% wrong. Why are 34% of people questioners? This needs to be debated. It cannot be just either believe it or you're some sort of an antic that doesn't
Duncan
believe
Stewart,
in anything.
what do you say to that we should be allowed to discuss it, bearing in mind that 34%?
Claire, the debate about climate change is over 20, 30 years ago. The science is very firm, as you know. There are climate change deniers. There are some of them in the room here. I see them in the room. A vested interest group, very small, contrarian people regarding climate change. Most of the time, they have a vested interest. Michael, you're a contractor in peat cutting. Yeah. You're the ones that make the money.
You told me on the way in that you slayed turf.
Of course
we do the same thing
Absolutely.
as what you done years ago.
Absolutely.
And second of all, you have actually insulted the people out there. The 34%. You said there is climate deniers here. There is 34% of people in a poll that said it. So they're not just ones and twos here and there.
Okay.
There are more
than
that.
Just make his point, and then I will come back to you.
Claire, I'm seeing young people here in the audience. They're going to have a very different future. My children are going to have a very big different future. In 20 years' time, the impacts of climate change in this country is going to be very serious. Already, I spent a lot of time out in Europe at the COP21 interviewing delegates from all of the developing world who are seriously being affected now by climate change. Hundreds of millions of people. And I'm looking at this generation here. In 20 years and beyond that, the impacts of climate change are going to be incredibly serious. We as human beings have changed the atmosphere. We have increased the greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere, the CO2 in the atmosphere for starting, to a level that hasn't been in the atmosphere for over 5 million years.
Can I put it to you, though, that
that's what we've done.
The scientific results are there, but there seems to be a communication problem.
Absolutely.
That we're not convincing people that science is not bringing, in particular, farmers along with them.
Claire, can I come in on one thing? The reality in 1990 is that there was 1.125 million people working in this country. Today, and it's a great thing, that there's 2 million people working in this country. Now, bear we put wings on them and get them to work. It is understandable that you're going to have more emissions between transport and all the different sectors. But let's get back to what we are talking about, and that is the national herd. And the reality of it is that this country, rather than any other country in Europe, is able to produce animals with a grass-based system that is the most efficient in Europe. And we need, if we go down the road of talking about this lunacy that's coming out about culling the national herd, we will lose family farms, we will have people unemployed. We haven't the money to do that in this country. So live in the real world and don't live in this fantasy land.
Can I just interrupt you for a second? I mean,
and I want to bring in some voices from the audience then.
But the basic core point of what I was trying to get across was the thesis was made that the methane gas from the livestock herd is less serious than previously thought. And this has been confirmed by the Tagus work. That's all I'm saying.
A new climate change denial organisation
I'm not
brought in Richard Linson to give that lecture. It wasn't open to journalists, but you were invited, and it is called the Irish Climate and Science Forum. And it has been organised, so there are climate change denial organisations in most countries, and now we have one ourselves.
Okay. Well, Ray Bates is here. Ray Bates is here. Ray, where are you? Just raise your hand.
Yes, I'm here.
Ray Bates, you're here.
Yes.
The organisation that Victoria mentions is your organisation, am I right?
Well, I'm a member of the Irish Climate Science Forum. I wouldn't call it my organisation, but I am a member of it. And I was involved in inviting Professor Richard Linson to give the lecture that he gave on the 4th of May. Now, Professor Linson is one of the leading climate scientists in the world. And one of the areas that he works in is climate sensitivity. And it happens that I work in climate sensitivity as well. And the scientific results that I've obtained in a paper that I published last year in an American journal support the findings of Professor Linson. This paper is based on satellite data and a mathematical model. It is not personal opinion. It was peer-reviewed by 5 reviewers for the journal, and they passed it for publication.
OK. Ray, I've got a lot of people who want to get in, so I'm sorry to rush you along, but we've so many raised hands. Megan Carmody from Friends of the Earth is here in front of you there. Yes, Megan, what do you want to say?
Yeah, firstly, I think the debate is over. I completely agree. And as a young climate campaigner, I'm really shocked and I'm kind of scared, to be honest, at hearing some of the things I'm hearing here tonight. We need a full transition to a carbon-free society, a fossil fuel-free society, as soon as possible. On the scale of the Industrial Revolution, we need that as soon as possible. If you ask people under 30 that same question that you had the figures to earlier, that will be higher, because we know that our future is going to be dramatically impacted by climate change. And there are a couple of things that I want to say in relation to what Ray just said. So first of all, there's the confirmation bias. If you find information that supports your already inherent belief, you're more likely to believe that and support it. So you can go searching for things that already support your belief, and you can disregard the rest. From 1991 to 2001, over 12,000 studies were published that supported and endorsed climate change and the methane emissions that we know.
I have to move on, Megan, because we do have a lot of people right behind you there, the gentleman with the glasses. Yep.
Yeah.
Quick point, please.
So, thank you. So we've heard a lot about the two sides in the debate, and quite often in the media and in circles, you hear it's environmentalists against farmers, or it's believers against deniers. And the fact is, the climate is changing. The rural economy is in decline. I'm a member of the Green Party, and I ran in the general election in Cavan Monaghan last year, and I met a lot of frustrated farmers. And listening to the IFA and listening to certain people, you would think that all farmers are, they want to intensify. I met a lot of farmers who feel the pressure to intensify, and that's pressure that's led largely by agribusiness. A lot of farmers are frustrated by the lack of opportunities for on-farm renewable energy reduction. So I think environmentalists and farmers need to start working together. This, as Megan said, this is a crisis, and it's going to require innovation on a scale like the Industrial Revolution. So it's time that we start working together.
Well, Thomas Cooney is here from the IFA. Thomas, just raise your hand. We'll get the microphone to you there. Hi, Thomas. What do you think of what you've heard so far?
Yeah, I think we should have proper discussion on this. I think it would be wrong to close down the debate. There is changes in our weather pattern. We notice that. There is more extreme weather. Our agricultural emissions have decreased by 6% since 1990. Great. But our sector is expanding. Great. And there is more efficiencies that we can gain. 9 out of 10 of the measures in the Rural Development Plan have climate reducing measures in them. There's the IFA Smart Farming Initiative, which has identified where there can be on-farm savings, cost savings of €5,000 per farm made, whilst reducing your emissions by 10%. The two are directly linked.
So you're saying we're farmers, we're not ignoring our responsibilities here, we're trying to do what we can.
Farmers will play their part.
But you're not doing it quickly enough, are you?
While agricultural emissions reduced by 6%, didn't go up to reduce. Transmission went up, or transport went up by 130%.
Okay.
Transport, energy and housing needs to play their part along with agriculture.
Okay, can I bring Duncan back in here? Do you accept that the IFA, that farmers are trying?
I think farmers are very vulnerable. About 87% of farmers can't make a living out of farming. It's a very serious, I think Matt, you agree with me. It's a major problem. Grass and cattle don't stack up financially. Leave aside the massive carbon emissions from methane. And by the way, I do not agree with what is said. I do know Jerry Boyle, Dr. Jerry Boyle, would not have said what Matt has said. The greenhouse gas emissions...
I can't confirm what he said because the man isn't here.
But I think in fairness to Anchagas, it's a very, very good organisation, a very good scientific organisation. And their scientists, and Jerry Boyle, who's a very good scientist himself, knows how serious methane is. And trying to put an argument that it has a 10 to 12-year life in the atmosphere is not the argument at all from a science point of view. The greenhouse gas emissions from methane are incredibly high. If you take methane over a 10-year cycle or a 20-year cycle, it's 80-something% more in times greater than CO2 emissions. That's the science.
Tell me what
over a 100-year cycle, it is 34%.
What are farmers to do then,
Farmers
Duncan?
can do an awful lot. And the problem for farmers is they're extremely vulnerable. First of all, they're exposed to weather, big time, and now with flooding from climate change. and from droughts and all these extreme events and unpredictable weather. And cattle farmers are extremely vulnerable in all of these areas. But also when they go to the marts, they are very vulnerable to the big beef barons. There are 3 big beef barons in this country. We know them. I won't name them here because for certain reasons. But I think we know who we're talking about here. They're incredibly powerful, and they have huge control over the whole agricultural business in this country, from the Department of Agriculture to the government, to Board Bia, right through. And of course, funding is flowing through a levy into the Irish IFA from that source as a funding. It's approximately €2 per head of cattle. And we're slaughtering possibly 2 million cows every year, or cattle every year. That money flows into the funds for the IFA.
Okay.
So there's a very clear vested
Duncan,
interest by the IFA. No, I don't want you to interrupt me here now, Michael. That money flows into the IFA. Now, by the way, I have great regard for the IFA. I don't want to be knocking the IFA. I had a cousin who was the president of the IFA, a very good man, and I have great belief in him. But I do know that IFA are very greatly tainted by the fact that so much money flows in revenue.
I'm coming to the end of my time here on
this.
this.
Go back to the farmers in terms of the solutions.
Really quick, Michael, there are 2 people coming in.
There is huge solution for farmers, Claire, and I really love to talk about that.
Ironically enough, for the farmers, Duncan, when they did have an opportunity, and when they have an opportunity now in exports, which great work has been done to different countries, ironically enough, some of the buddies of all this debate has decided to go out and wage a campaign against live exports because it's the only instrument the farmer has of keeping the factories in line. Am I right or wrong, Matt?
All right, Anna-Marie McHugh is here from the World Ploughing Championships. Anna-Marie, tell us what you think.
Well, number one, Claire, I think that people can make huge assumptions about farming and farmers worldwide and here in Ireland too. It's been said already here tonight that farmers are on one side and environmentalists are on the other side. That's wrong for a start. Matt was saying at the very beginning, he's only bringing up the question of open the debate. I'm a farmer's wife, I'm a farmer's daughter. We're entitled to know the facts. We're a dot in the ocean in relation to the whole methane issue. If we sold all our cattle or culled them all tomorrow morning, Brazil are planning to double their output of cattle by 2022.
But is that reason enough for us not to act because somewhere else isn't?
But the amount of things that are happening in Irish agriculture at the moment, Claire, to actually meet these issues and deal with them. I have paperwork that high that I could have brought with you tonight that we have to enact on our farms every day. We're working towards this. I do agree that the environmental associations and the farming organisations need to work closer, but we're custodians of the land, don't forget. Okay. And I can guarantee you every farmer in Ireland is more conscientious about Irish land and about the environment than anyone else on the topic.
Okay.
They need to be led by government, though. They need to be led by government, and that's just
they are led by government. And
that's just not happening. The new climate mitigation plan just published says that flatlining would be a high ambition on the part of government as far as agricultural emissions are concerned.
I know that we have.
There's one reality.
I know that lots of people have lots more to say on this, but I have to leave it there. We're going to be back after this short break. Thank you all very much indeed.